Hello, this is the Bite Weasel, and in this video we'll be doing some more work on our Roblox Tycoon game. This time we'll be adding a mechanism into our code that allows us to unlock the buttons in order. So let's take a look at our Tycoon. Now as you can see, if you log into the Tycoon and you are starting from scratch, we currently have like 5 buttons and they're all available at the very beginning. So even though I have no saved data right now, and I've just joined the Tycoon for the very first time, I can still see every single one of our buttons. Now, this is okay in such a small Tycoon that only has 5 buttons, but you can imagine as you expand the Tycoon and you add like a second level and another conveyor belt and the ability to buy windows and posters and crates and all sorts of stuff, we're going to end up with many, many, many more buttons. And if we continue in the current system, every single one of those buttons is going to be visible from the very beginning, which is probably not what we want. In fact, if you join most tycoons in Roblox, you will see only maybe 1 or 2 buttons at the very beginning, and the rest are sort of visible as you upgrade. So as you stand on the second button, for example, the third one becomes visible. And as you stand on the third one, maybe unlocks 4 and 5. So we want a system like that for our Tycoon. Instead of showing absolutely everything all at once, we're going to only show a single button at the beginning and then build on from there, showing more and more buttons as you unlock. So how can we do that? Well, I think the very first thing that we need to do is just hide all the buttons when you start the game from the beginning. So we can go into our factory script, which sort of deals with creating these factories at the beginning. And when we actually clone the plot, if you recall from the earlier videos, we take that template in our workspace and at the very beginning, or when someone rejoins, we basically reclone a the template into these particular plots in our factory. So why not, when we do that cloning, we hide all the buttons to begin with, and then we can sort of unlock them as we go. So to do that, we would go into our clone plot function, and here after we've cloned it, we can basically hide all the buttons that exist. So the way to do that is to just loop through stuff. So for I part in pairs of the clone, which is going to be the actual factory itself. So we actually want to do get children because we want to hide the children, not the actual entire thing itself. Uh, Check to see if it's a button because buttons are really the only thing that we want to hide. And when the button gets created, it will, in our button script, actually end up hiding the associated item. So if we just hide the button, the rest of it should be fine. So if we go into factories and we will say part, helpers.hide item part. But we only want to do that if we know that this is a button. And how do we know if it's a button? Well, buttons must all have an unlock ID in our current system. So if you don't recall, the way that our unlock system works is each button has a attribute on it called unlock ID, and this must be unique throughout the game. And the reason that it must be unique is because this is the value that we store into our data store, so that when someone unlocks it, we add dropper 1 into the data store, and if they quit and come back, dropper 1 gets bought automatically for them as part of loading that profile. So we know if it's a button because it has an unlock ID on it. So we loop through all the children of our factory. If it has an unlock ID, then we hide it. So if I start the game now, what we should see is that all those buttons have gone, which they have. But do you know what hasn't gone? The labels on the button. But that's okay because we can fix that. Because cunningly, last video, we actually went into our helpers and we refactored the way that items are shown and hidden. So now if we need to update the hiding code for anything, we can just come into here where it says hide item and we can update it. So clearly the problem is that a billboard GUI, which is inside of our button, is not hidden. And that's because it is not a base part. So it's sort of ignored. So we can come in here and we can say else if part is and then we can say billboard GUI. Then how do you hide a billboard GUI? Well, it actually showed us right there. Part.enabled equals false. So now if I start the game, those things are now going to be hidden, which is exactly what we want. But if you recall, in our helper script, we have a matching show item to where you hide an item. So we want to make sure that these things always match up. So when I added this billboard GUI condition in here, I want to make sure that I have a similar thing when I show it. So I want to set it to not to true, because the template may not have it true all the time. Instead, we're going to continue the pattern from here where it gets the matching template item for this part and uses that value. So that should work. We should be able to get the template item and match up its enabled property. And you can see here, this is how it's searching for the template item. It's just getting the item in the template that has the same template ID. And you can watch the previous video, which talks about how that works. So now these show and hide items work pretty well. We hide everything and well, that's it. We hide everything. So next is to show stuff. And I think the first thing that we can show is anything that has a cost of 0 should probably be shown by default, right? Because you know that's going to be the first thing that they have to press because it has no cost. So we can sort of change this thing here to just look up the cost and say if part get attribute cost. And you can say if cost is less than 0, if it equals 0, then continue. We don't want to hide it. Otherwise, hide everything else. So now if I play, you'll see our dropper that is cost 0 shows up. And you know what? Cost 0 kind of bugs me. So I'm going to go into our button script. I'm going to see where it sort of sets the cost. And I'm just going to alter this a bit. If cost equals 0, then do this, else set it to this. And what I'm going to do is if the cost is 0, instead of it setting a $sign, I'm just going to write the word free because I think that looks a little better. So now it should say dropper is free. You don't have to do that. It's up to you, but I think that looks better. So now when I stand on this thing, yes, I'm going to unlock the dropper, which is great, but what do I press next? That would be my question. And that's the next part that we have to work on. So somehow we need to know that this dropper button here unlocks probably the upgrader button, right? And the way that I would do this is to have a big list somewhere that says, okay, dropper 1 unlocks upgrader 1, and upgrader 1 unlocks dropper 2, and dropper 2 unlocks the walls or whatever. So some list like that. And a good place to put that is probably in our module script called helpers. We can shove it right at the top. And so we'll have a local unlock order table. What do we want in this table? Well, we really want a list of unlock IDs that get unlocked when you stand on an unlock ID. So really we're going to need a table of tables. And the way that you do that in Lua is you create a table just like this. And for the content of the table, though, you put the name in square brackets. So for example, dropper 1, which I think is our unlock ID, our unique unlock ID for that free button, we want that to unlock the walls button, I guess, and the upgrader 1 button. So now our unlock order table has a table within it that has the key dropper 1, and the values for dropper 1 are walls and upgrader 1. And this is good. You can now go ahead and sort of build up that unlock order using this nested tables. So upgrader 1 should unlock big dropper 1. I think that's the next one in the list. And big dropper 1 should unlock dropper 2. I think that's the order that it works in our unlock sort of IDs. So there you go. Unlock order. We're going to use this table to basically say, okay, when we buy dropper 1, what do we show next? Walls and upgrader 1. Neat. When we buy upgrader 1, what do we show next? Big dropper 1. So let's see if we can do that. So when we buy this item, we need to look up and show these ones afterwards. That should be pretty straightforward, I think. In the buy item function, we show the item to buy, but I bet we can look through this unlock order and show those items too. So local to unlock equals module. No, wait, it's a local thing. Unlock order. And then the name of the unlock ID, which I don't think we have yet. So let's grab that. Unlock ID equals the button that you've just pressed, get attribute, unlock ID. So that's going to get that unique value from our attributes table for the button you just clicked. So then we look at what to unlock from our unlock order table. So say we just stood on dropper 1, that should look up this value, which is going to give us this array list here. So now we should be able to loop through those things, assuming they exist, to unlock them. So I guess it's an ID. Yep. In the pairs of to unlock, do. So now we're going to be looping through that essential array, right? Essentially, that array is going to be looped through, and it's suggesting some code here, but I don't entirely think that's true. Like, what is this even doing? Unlock button, parent, 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 unlocked. It's gone crazy. No, we're not going to do that. Thanks, though, Roblox. Thanks for trying. Instead, what we really need to do is find the matching button in the factory that has the unlock ID that we want to unlock. So right now, it's going to be called ID. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to have to loop through the factory. So we can say local factory equals the button.parent, right? Because whatever the parent of the button is, that's going to be the factory. So here in the template, it will look like that. But when we've cloned the template into one of those plots, the button's parent will be the factory. So then we loop through each part in the factory's children. So factory get children and do. And if the ID that we're trying to find equals the parts get attribute unlock ID, if those match, then we want to show the item. And I think that's module.showItem part. And if we found it, then we can continue. Nope, we can break. We don't need to keep looking through the factory once we found it. So I think that should work. And I'm going to add a comment here so I know. Look through the unlock table to find what buttons to show next. So I think this works. We get the attribute, the button's unlock ID attribute. So that will be like dropper 1 when we stand on it. We go to our unlock table and we find dropper 1 in it and get back the list of things that it wants to show. Then for each of those entries, so the first one is going to be walls, we search through the factory's children looking for the walls button. And when we find it, we show it. And then we quit out of this loop. And then we're going to go from the walls button. It will move on to the upgrader 1. And upgrader 1 should be found in the factory then and get shown, and then we're done. So in theory, I think that works. Let's find out. So if I stand on this button now, hopefully, yay, it shows the walls button and the upgrader button. And if I wait long enough to earn enough money to unlock the upgrader button, as long as our table is correct, we should then see the next button in the list. And we do. So it's working. So now when someone joins, they should only see one button at a time, or however many we show based on our unlock order mechanism. So that's really cool. If you're curious why every time I start and stop, it's not loading the previous state, even though we did all that work to do profile service stuff to store your state in the data store. The reason it's not working is because the API services are unavailable. I've essentially turned those off so that I can quickly test starting from scratch every time. And you can simply do that by changing your game settings, or in my case, I've saved to a local file. And local files don't have access to the data store. So that is a quick way of doing that if you don't want to have to reset your state using a plugin every time. So that's neat. But do you know what's kind of annoying, and I don't really like it, is the fact that now, if I was to add a brand new button, so let's copy one of these things, that button and the second dropper, if I duplicate these things and move them around, well, that's not a good that's not a good place to put it. We sort of run out of conveyor belt space here, so let's sort of move it onto the other side. So as I'm going around and I'm saying to myself, okay, I want a brand new button to do things. I want it to look like this now. You know, and you're building up your world and you're adding a whole bunch of new stuff. Now I've got to remember, okay, in that button, what am I going to have to do now that it's a brand new button? Well, if I just try and play the game, I'm going to get a nice warning that tells me I forgot to do something, which is duplicated unlock ID found for dropper 2. That's right, because I duplicated the same button as dropper 2, which means I need a new unlock ID. This has to be unique, otherwise it will mess up our profile data, which we don't want to do. So these are the values that get stored in the data store, and if there was a duplicated one, you wouldn't know which button they actually unlocked. So when you tried to load that later, it would get confused. So we had a nice bit of code that sort of protects us when we need to do something and we might easily forget about it. Right? So I've done that, but if I play the game now, I won't get an error. Perfect. I don't want an error. The problem is there is no way for me to ever see that button. Right? Because I haven't included it in my unlock order table. No matter which one of these buttons I stand on, and even when I get to the very end, that button is going to be hidden for absolutely ever, which is not what we want. And it's easy to think about now when you've only got like 6 buttons to worry about. But later on, when you like have a second level of your factory and you have like sloping and new places and crates and all sorts of like 100 buttons, and you make the 101st button and you forget about it, you're probably not going to notice that in testing, especially if you're testing from scratch. There's no way you're going to get all the way up to button 99 to figure out that button 101 is missing. So we want some code to protect us, just like we protected ourselves from forgetting to update the unlock ID. We want a bit of code that says, hey, this button will never be visible because it's not included in the unlock order table. So I think we can do that in our factory script. Right at the beginning, when we're already ensuring that no template child has a duplicated unlock ID, why don't we do something to make sure that no template child has a missing entry in this table? Okay, so we can do that by going to factories and just looking to see if this unlock ID appears in that table. So we can say if not module dot unlock order, sorry, then there's an error. And the error will be could not find unlock ID. Could not find unlock ID blah in the unlock order table, right? Which means we've had some failure. Now it doesn't know what module.unlock order is, so let's go and fix that. This is a local thing. Let's actually export it by doing module dot. And now because we're exporting something, a actual table rather than a function, there is a little trick that I want to use here by calling table.freeze. Now this is a built-in Lua thing that marks this table as read-only at runtime, which means I've sort of protected myself from a silly mistake where if I accidentally went module unlock order, dropper one equals nil, if I accidentally did that somewhere, Roblox would show an error rather than just going, oh, okay, that's fine until you get to the dropper one button, which could be button 101, then it throws the error, which is bad. So a little help there. You don't have to use table.freeze, but it might be useful to know about. You can sort of read up about it now and see what other scenarios it might be useful for. But for us, we're going to mark this table as read-only so we don't make an accident. And now let's go back to our factory script. Module, it's not module, is it? It's helpers.unlock order. So if we don't find it, then we're going to show an error. So if I play now, we'll see that it didn't do anything. Why not? Oh, because this is wrong. So it's not helpers. We actually have to check not the table itself, but the content of the table. So now if this was, say, walls, it's going to look through here and it's going to throw an error because there is no walls. So it finds dropper 2 first, and that one doesn't exist in there. Which makes sense. That sort of protected us. So really now, it's going to want us to have an entry in this table for every single kind of button. But for some of them, we don't want them to actually unlock anything new. Right? The walls button, if you unlock that, currently we don't want it to show any other buttons afterwards. So we're going to have some blank entries in here. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to require blank entries in here because then at least you've thought to yourself, the walls button, what should happen after this? And if the answer is nothing should happen, I think that's valid. But if we never checked and really you just forgot about it and you wanted the walls to unlock crates or something, then without this check, we wouldn't know. So this is a good protection, even though it means that we have to add blank entries in there. So that's protected us against not thinking about the button, but it hasn't protected us against the scenario where a button is never, ever going to be visible. We've added dropper 3 in here to say, yep, once you get to dropper 3, we don't unlock anything new because it's the last button, essentially. But none of these things ever, ever, ever unlock and show dropper 3. So we need more protection. This is not sufficient. So let's do the next part. The next part is to figure out if any of these children contain our button. Because if they don't, that means none of the buttons that we buy will ever show our button. So we basically have to loop through these parts of the table. And then for each one of those, look in the children and make sure that we find a match. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to have to loop through the button names. Really, it's the unlock name. And the button show items, names, button show, whatever, in the pairs of the helpers.unlock order. So that's going to loop through the outer ones, dropper 1, upgrader 1, and then for each of those, we need to loop through the inner ones. We need another loop that says for nothing, and then we'll just say unlock name, I guess, in pairs of the buttons to show do. I think this is right. Well, we do want that check. Thanks, Roblox, but not quite doing this. If it equals that, then we found it, right? Found equals true. There's a way to unlock that button. Local found equals false. So we start out with false. We loop through all of that. And if we find a matching name in our table's children, then we're good. And if we get to the end of this and we haven't found one, then we need to throw a very similar error. So if we haven't found one, the error is could not find a way to show unlock ID in the unlock ID table, right? So now if I play, assuming we've done that right, could not find a way to show unlock ID dropper one in the unlock order table. Well, that's not true. That's not true. The way to unlock, oh, it is true. There is no way to unlock dropper one. Oh, that is interesting. So it has worked, and it's found that no matter which button you press, you'll never unlock dropper one. And that's true because dropper one is free, right? So we actually need another condition in here. So if it's not found, or the, what are we looking through? Part? Or the part has a cost of 0. No, wait, it's the opposite. So if it's not found and the cost is greater than 0. Because if it's not found but the cost is 0, that's fine because that's how you unlock it. So it doesn't need to be in the table. So I think that should hopefully work. And it does. It finds that button that we added that has no way to unlock it, right? Which we wouldn't have really known about because it's so far down the list that we've sort of forgotten about it. So that is good protection. And now we can say, okay, when you buy dropper 2, that unlocks dropper 3. So I know this was sort of complicated in terms of all of these tables nested within tables and loops within loops, but hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And this sort of is protecting ourselves not only from having duplicate unlock IDs now, but there is a way to show the button in the unlock order and then fix that typo there. Yeah, so that's what the code is going to do now. So I do like this system of code that protects you from making a mistake. Now, I know it looks a bit complicated and you think, oh, it's probably overkill because it's, doing all of this whenever you start the server and why bother? And it's true that you don't need this code, but I think it helps because there's going to be some time when you duplicate a button and then you just forget about it. And then there's going to be no way to see it. So I like writing code that sort of helps you help yourself. And that's what this is doing. It's going to protect us not only from having duplicate unlock IDs, which would break the profile service, but now also if we ever add a button and forget to have a mechanism to show it. So that's cool. Well, let's just play our Tycoon. Why not? And see if that it works. So I should... Oh. Okay. We had a mistake. Lucky we played it. So let's take a look at this error. Attempt to index nil with dropper 1. So what were we doing here? Well, when we buy the item... Oh, that's right. So we renamed it from a local table to now an exported table. So it's no longer unlock order. In this file, it's module.unlock order. And when you require it from another... And when you require it from another one, then it is called helpers or whatever your keyword is when you require it. So now that should work. Now we should be able to play the Tycoon and have it work. Unfortunately, you're going to have to watch me play the Tycoon now and wait to get some money. Doopy doopy doop boop. Maybe we should have a speed up script so that we don't have to wait so long. But you can see it is working. I stood on that second button and that unlocked this third button over here. And if I stand on this third button, I'm hoping that it unlocks this one. Oh, come on, big dropper. You've got to give us some more money so we can get this one. Yay! And that worked there. Ooh, I can unlock this already. That's pretty cool, I think. So we now have a mechanism for unlocking buttons in a particular order. And we have a mechanism for protecting ourselves from forgetting about that particular unlock order thing. There you go. So there is just one minor problem that we need to fix right now. Even though our unlock order is working perfectly well, you don't see these buttons until I stand on this first one, and then you see just those two, but you don't see the next ones. Well, it turns out the issue is, even though we can't collide with these hidden buttons, you'll notice I'm not jumping up and down as I walk over where they should be. We can still touch the invisible buttons. So once I've earned 700 money, you'll see that if I walk on where that button used to be, I can still buy it. So obviously we don't want that. We want to hide the buttons, but we also want to stop them from activating when we touch them. So it's a pretty easy fix. If we go into our hide item and our show item, the same way that we're modifying can collide, we need to make sure that we're modifying can touch. So when this is set to false, even if you touch a part that's invisible, the handler will not trigger. So we can do the same thing here. We'll change it from can collide being false when it was hidden to whatever the template is. So normally that will be true, but maybe you make another item where can touch is always off. And if it's so, when we show it, it will still remain off. So now this should be our final script, sort of working for our button mechanism. The unlocking is still working. I stand on the first button and it shows only 2. But now if I wait for 700 money, which is kind of a long time, come on, you silly things. Hurry up, hurry up. We should no longer be able to unlock an invisible button, which is probably good. You don't want people accidentally unlocking stuff that they cannot even see. So there we go. Even though we're standing here, it's not unlocking. So now it's working, and you can sort of go through and you can quickly unlock all the items in our tycoon. And yeah, we're good to go. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, leave a comment, ring that notification bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.